be off the screen.
Well, thank you. I managed to go to the first conference just to be a supporter, and then was very fortunate that Mike reached out and asked me to be a part of this one. It's kind of a unique thing for us. We have a blend of tile work that we started with, and which is kind of an interesting, kind of more of a canvas on clay. So, yeah. We're excited to be here and take a little bit of our journey of a handmade tile. We began the adventure with a background. I was in drawing and Katie was in pottery. Didn't have a wheel, so tile work kind of worked out. We found this as a great way to combine our skills. We both started in our 20s in 1999. We opened our tiny little studio in our apartment in Suttons Bay, where we carved the first molds on our kitchen tile or on the table, and it was a mess to clean up, but it worked out. We learned how to make tiles from a lot of books of just pottery, and at that time, not a lot of internet information, and we learned mold making from different people who did ceramics around us, and learning the skills that it made to require to do it. Later, we realized that we needed a bigger space. So we moved our studio into Suttons Bay, where we had a kiln that was 30 miles away, so we would have to load all of the pieces through the window into the car, and the neighbors kept wondering what we were doing, but many hours of driving across town at 3 a.m. and watching the sunrise then as we came back to get it. But yeah, over the years, our first designs included nature and lighthouses, building a sense of what was around us, using the natural clay from the area, and then slowly picking up Celtic designs from custom work that people would ask us to do, and then building a deep connection with the customers, which made us transform more into the Celtic designs. We were inspired by the pieces and slowly learning different techniques to draw our own pieces as it went along. We began selling our stuff at local shows and craft fairs. Although these events, we met other tile artists and learned about the rich history of tiles in Michigan and across the United States. Tile making at that time was having its own second renaissance with the arts and crafts movement during the 1990s, and there we learned to share a lot of our abilities with different works. In 1876 brought about the Centennial Exhibition, beginning the new era of tile making, as the arts and crafts movement brought a desire for unique tiles. United States, hundreds of different tile artists and studios began to prop up, each with their own unique style of methods for making, pressing, and glazing. Moravian pottery, as shown, was founded in 1898. They are now operated by a historical park and host tile festivals each year where people can tour tile works and shop made by contemporary artists. Balch Alder was founded in 1910. He started making his tiles in the backyard in the mid-1920s, and then later employed over 125 people. Flint Fayance Tile Company was founded in 1921, just a few hours from our studio now. The tile company was created by the AC Sparks Plug Company as a way to make use of the spark plug kilns that were running 24 hours but weren't having production. So they brought in tile artists to make pieces. Artists were brought in And then in the morning, there would be a shift change back into spark plugs. The tiles were a reflection of the desire to break free of commercial methods of production and answer the demand of individual craftsmanship brought about by the arts and crafts movement. Often made from locally sourced clay and glazes, each one different in its own person who created it. Unfortunately, the Great Depression in the 1930s brought an end to many of the studios and shops across the states. Pewabic pottery, unfortunately for us, was one of those few that survived. It was founded in 1903 by Mary Chase Perry. The studio is located in Detroit, Michigan, just a few hours from where our studio is now. Through great effort and dedicated people, they have continued to operate for over 120 years. They are now the center of education in pottery and tile making and continue to produce the tiles in the same way that was produced 120 years ago. Their presence in Michigan has fostered a large community in contemporary tile artists. We have exhibited our work there and also sell in their galleries. So, our first studio was located on Sutton's Bay. Now we're currently in Lansing. For most people in Michigan, we also use the map method. In 2006, we moved our studio to the capital of Lansing, bringing our tiles closer to Pewabic and other shows that we do around the states. We settled our studio in what used to be the former home of the Melling Forge. This was one of the original hammer mills that was in Lansing that made car parts that shook the grounds throughout the city. It was closed in 1999 after a horrible labor dispute which ended up tear gassing the entire neighborhood. There was still riot glass on half of the building on this side where our studio was. The new larger studio allowed us to have our kilns and everything all in one location. We produced there until 2015, where we had the opportunity to move it into our home and have both a way to work and create and have coffee without distractions. So Katie will walk us through the process.
Okay, we'd like to share with you a little bit about the process and techniques we use to make the tiles. Each piece begins with a hand drawing. The drawings are then moved into the computer to be refined and scaled. We cast a block of plaster that will become the mold for our tile. Forms are set up on a piece of glass to make a smooth surface. The plaster is mixed and poured to form the block that the design will be carved into. After pouring, the plaster will cure for several days. The photo of me pouring the plaster shows the mold being made for the piece that's in the show. After the plaster block has had a chance to dry and harden, we use a variety of needle tools and styluses to carve the design into the block. The blocks are the molds that we'll use to produce the tiles. So there's Brian carving the block for that piece. Most of our tiles we use an extruder with a die the size of the mold to shape the clay for pressing. That's our extruder and the die in the middle. The piece we made for the show was so large that the extruder for the clay was too small. We had to roll that clay by hand. We choose a mid-fire buff stoneware clay to make our tiles. A lot of tile makers will use a white clay porcelain or white stoneware to get brighter glaze colors, but we like the earthy natural colors and textural body of the stoneware clay. I feel like it is evocative of the stone that a lot of Celtic work is carved into. We use a handmade wooden tile press to press the plaster block into the soft clay to create the design for the tile. So on the right-hand side, you'll see the press that we made. The press will handle tile up to 6 inches. When a tile is larger than that, we use a mallet and a block to press the mold. So that's me hammering on the delicate block that Brian carved. It's much harder on the plaster mold, not as easy to control the pressure. So you always take a chance doing that. The clay on the mold is cut to shape and a hanger and a maker stamp are added. The clay will dry on the block for about an hour and then be removed to dry further. It's important to get all the water out of the clay before the first firing. If the tiles are wet, they will explode in the kiln.
And have before.
Yes, they've blown up a lot of clay. Okay, so here the tiles are drying. We place the tiles on drywall sheets to pull moisture out of the clay more evenly and help them dry flat, which they don't always do. They'll dry on the racks for nearly 2 weeks before they're ready for their first firing. We lose some tiles at this stage to warping and curving of the edges. Tiles are bisque fired in our electric kiln to drive off all the water and harden the clay. The heating stage takes about 7 hours, and it takes about 12 hours to cool the kiln before it can be opened. The bisque firing tiles can be stacked together and touch each other. They won't stick together. We can fit about 100 tiles in the kiln at this stage. After the bisque firing, the glazes are applied to the tiles. Any glaze color that touches will run together in the final firing, so they have to be applied very carefully. The ridges that are pressed into the clay will help to keep the colors apart. We use a combination of brushes and bottles to apply the glazes. The color of the glaze before the final firing looks nothing like the finished piece. So the colors that we're applying in that top corner are the colors of the pieces that we have in the show. All the colors are applied to the tiles before the final firing, so we just do one final firing. The pieces are then loaded back into the kiln for the last firing, which will take 19 hours to complete. They'll be heated slowly to 1,205 degrees Celsius or 2,151 degrees Fahrenheit. We always wait until the tiles are completely cool to unload the kiln. The finished tiles are now ready to find homes. So now that we've made the tiles, what can you do with them? We sell the tiles individually to collectors to hang on the wall or on a shelf. We also mat and frame our tiles to be hung on the wall as art. Our tiles are also suitable for installation in backsplashes, fireplaces, showers, furniture, just about anywhere.
Thank you, Michael Carroll.
Yeah, the piece in the middle is a famous artist's piece. We've worked on a number of installation projects over the year. It's really fun to work with a client to develop the project and watch it come to life.
The years we have spent wild adventures on tiles that we've created. In 24 years, we have begun making our tiles and setting at shows, setting up the booth at 450 events across the United States. We have pressed and glazed by hand about 54,000 tiles. Not all of them made it through the journey. We sell a few pieces through our website and through online marketplaces, but in a few galleries that represent our work, but mostly we do different festivals and shows with one-on-one sales. Over the years, we have set up in just about every type of event you could imagine: craft shows, farmers markets, holiday markets, and fine art fairs throughout the United States. In the early years, we would set up at about 30 shows per year, sometimes 3 a weekend. Over the years, the events that we sell have gotten bigger and the number of festivals less.
We now sell at about 8 or so events a year. For the most part, we set up our booth exclusively at Irish and Celtic festivals and Highland Games. We're usually set up in our booth for 3 days or so at an event. We're sometimes open as many as 15 hours a day. During the festivals, we have a chance to talk to thousands of people about our work and about Celtic art. It's an energizing kind of exhausting to be at the shows. There's the physical labor of driving across the country in the very, very old van and lugging and hauling the artwork and displays in tents. But it's a really amazing experience to have the chance to witness so many people experiencing your artwork, looking at it, exploring it, and finding out what it means to them. Having the chance to be a part of that experience is the well that our inspiration is drawn from. Being on the road all these years and selling art has been a wild adventure. We've experienced hurricanes, floods, tornadoes, a tiny earthquake, wild animals in our little booth. The road is always an adventure, and you never know what it has in store for you when you pack up the van and head out. That experience of traveling to the shows and the people that we've met along the way have shaped our work in many ways. We're starting to see a second generation of people come to our booth who remember coming to our booth as children with their parents. It's a privilege to make things that people find meaningful, that become part of their story. And thank you for sharing this adventure with us and having us here.